Hello, hello, hello. This is Simon and welcome to my lesson on standard stock forms. Now, standard stock forms are basically shapes and lengths and widths and thicknesses that we can get in our local timber merchants. And it's really useful to know what we can buy, because while we're designing, we should keep these measurements in mind, and that will then stop us having to change things like our length, width and thicknesses whilst we are coming to a final solution, and then we realize that we can't get these sorts of measurements in our local merchant. Terminology is also really important to get right when we're ordering things. You want to get the right materials. So, do you need a plank, a board, a dowel, a molding? Let's have a review of those words as well today. Let's start then with these three measurements then. We've got length, width and thickness. And normally length would be the longest measurement. But with woods, we also consider it to be the direction that the grain is going. Width would be your next measurement, and then thickness, normally the thinnest. But there are some restrictions on this, so we'll discuss these as we go through. By that I mean it's easy to cut something to length and to width to get the size that you want, but messing about with the thickness can be problematic. So let's watch out for that. Going into the wood merchants, the largest piece of material that you're going to find are the manufactured boards. Now these are really big pieces, and you shouldn't really move these around on your own. Needs a couple of people, because the length of these boards start off at 244 centimeters, and the width would be half of that, 122 centimeters. So you can see that they're quite big indeed. Now these boards come in quite a lot of different thicknesses, so 3, 4, 5 and 6, and then they generally go up in threes then, so 9, 12, 15 and 18 are very common sizes. I mean, I have some at 22 as well, and I know you're going to say, well, that's not 3 millimeters jump, but this is it with these boards. You have to look to see what your merchant has in stock. For example, you might find that hard board, we only have sort of thicknesses around about 3 or 4. I have seen it up to 6, but 3 and 4 are common sizes for that. OS board and chipboard, again, don't tend to be very thin in down in this section, but they start off around about 9 to 18 as a general rule. Where materials like MDF and plywood, you're going to find in a great range of different thicknesses, and they will cover all of this these measurements here. And you may well ask, why do we have these sort of strange measurements here of 244 by 122? Because basically it's from the imperial system going into the metric system. This is how we used to make them, and this is the measurements which we've ended up with by default. The next largest pieces of material that we're going to see are planks. Planks are determined by their thickness, and it should be nothing less than 38 millimeters in thickness, not less than 38. And the width of these should not be less than 64 millimeters. And again, that is because of the imperial system of 1.5 inch by 2.5 inches. So let's just tidy that up there, not less than 38 by 64. Okay. So let's go to pieces which are below the 38 by 64. I keep saying it because hopefully that will sink in a little bit, those two measurements. And we call these boards. Now I know what you're going to say. Hang on, Simon. You've already told us down here that we've got manufactured boards, and now you're telling us about another type of board. Well, okay, this is a very traditional thing. These boards were called boards first, if you like. So you find them in words such as floorboards, which cover your flooring for your house. Maybe you've got some underneath your carpet. Where manufactured boards is a more recent development. And, you know, we do sometimes slip into saying sheets as well for manufactured boards. So you can have a sheet of plywood, and it all fits. So basically, you've got to think about the context that you're using it in. And, you know, boards, well, it's not used a lot as a sort of plank of wood anymore. We're more likely to call it a plank, even though technically it isn't. And this tradition continues really with the next pieces of wood, where you find that they have already been cut into a section. So, you know, maybe a square section like this, or a rectangular piece. And this is all based really because of the building trade, and that the builders use this a lot for roof making, for doorways, for interior walls. And therefore they needed sort of standard sizes already cut up. So you might hear people saying things like, can I have some 2x2, which means 2x2 or 4x2. And these are basically inches, aren't they? It's 2 inches by 2 inches, which would make this measurement something like 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters. Whereas a 4x2 would take us then up to the bigger size, the plank size, because that would be 100 by 50 roughly. Moving on to the really thin pieces of wood that we can get, we then have veneers. And these are extremely thin indeed. We're starting at 0.4 millimeters and moving up to, you know, 1.2, maybe pushing it to 1.5 millimeters in thickness. And of course, these are really good for decoration on blander pieces of wood like MDF. So it looks like it's a more expensive material. Moving on to some of the more unusual shapes, we've got this shape which is cylindrical, and we call this dowel. Okay, look at the spelling of that, D-O-W-E-L, 1L. And this dowel is a plain dowel, because we can also get serrated dowel, which has got these grooves on the side of it. And basically they are there to increase the surface area when we use these in a dowel joint. So, you know, more glue will sit into this area. And they're already sometimes cut to size with these little chamfer pieces angled on the end so that we can get them easily into the hole. And dowel comes in a range of sizes. So we start off like with diameter 4 millimeters. So remember we're looking here at the diameter going across to measure these pieces. And that's the little symbol, remember, there for that diameter. And they go 5, 6, and then again they jump to even numbers, 8, 10, 12. And then you probably find they go to 15, 20, 22, you know, maybe up to 24 and so on. If you get any bigger than this, then you're going into sort of these bigger rod sizes. But I know, you know, it's confusing, isn't it? And it's not until you've really bought this a number of times that you realize what's available to you in your local store. And the length of dowel really ranges from starting from 1 meter up to 2. Maybe you can get it at 2.5 meters, but I haven't seen it longer than that. Now we can get even more weirder shapes in items which we call moldings. And these can be very tricky in shape. If I just point one out to you here, these have been routed. I'll do a video on routering, but these have been routed shapes, and you get all these lovely different cross sections and profiles being formed. And they are used a lot in decoration around your own home. Maybe you can find some yourself. For example, if you just look at a door, you're going to find that there is some moldings down here, which is skirting board, which covers the gap between your floor and your wall. And then you also get trim around the door as well. Again, that can be plain or fancy, depending on your style, but it's all different types of molding. So let's just write that in. This is skirting board. We're back to that word board again, aren't we? There we go. Skirting board, and we've got the architrave at the top here and on the sides to make a fancy door frame. And moldings are also used on frames, so on your picture frames, and you know, they can get really decorative, can't they? And the very small moldings are called beading, and these again are used for decorative purposes. For example, if you've done a panel door and you want to frame the edge, you would use beading. Let me just show you a little close-up there of the beading used on this door. All the materials on this side of the screen, and that includes the manufactured boards as well, are ready to use. So you can buy them and directly place them into your projects. However, with all the natural timbers that we've got on this side, they've been through a process called conversion, which is cutting this up from logs into the planks that we require. And I cover that in another video. But you can see here that this surface is very rough, in that the big circular saw which has been used to cut this leaves quite a lot of marks on it as it rips through the wood. So this is what we call rough sawn finish, and you can buy your wood like this. Another way to buy your wood is to have it planed both sides. So remember, that is making two surfaces very smooth by putting it through a planer. And therefore you can see here that this side would be smooth, this other side would be smooth, but the edges will still be left rough sawn, and you can cut that off yourself. So we shorten this to PBS, and you know, you can also get PAR as well, which means that it is planed all round. And this gives you the top quality piece that you can buy, with all the surfaces at 90 degrees to each other and very smooth, ready to be cut up into your project. Okay, there we have it. I hope you've enjoyed that. We're ready now to go down the shop and buy our stuff.